Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is in God Math Part 3. There's some great stuff here. You're going to love it. Let's get started in Revelation chapter 1, verse 3. It says, "Blessed is he who reads and those who hear the words of the prophecy and heed the things that are written in it, for the time is near." You know, Revelation, this is the only book of the Bible where you get a blessing, where it promises a blessing if you read it. And that name, here's your blessing for today. That name, Revelation, is what we call it in English. In Greek, it was written in Greek, it's called Apocalypsis. Okay? And as you remember, Greek also has values to each letter. Remember, in Hebrew, it's gematria, and in Greek, it's called isosophy. So here's the word apocalypsis, and I've put in the Greek values, and the word adds up to 1,512. All right, so what's so big about that? Well, it comes down to 7 times 216. Well, as you know, 7 is God's completion, perfection number. All right, and 216, what's so great about that? Well, 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, which that should ring a bell, because that is the number of the name of the Antichrist, right? Which these are the two big players in the book of Revelation. You have God / Jesus, 7, and Antichrist, 666. Very clever, okay? And we know this verse from Revelation 13:16. This is where it says, "And he causes all," we're talking about Antichrist, "he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. And he decrees that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. All right? So, what does that even mean? Who is the Antichrist? How are we going to know? We're going to do a whole video on this. I was looking through old files a few days ago, actually looking for this slide I went with the 512, and I have an old talk all on Antichrist. It's so good. So I started cleaning it up the last couple of days, and we'll get it filmed soon. Okay? Now, 666, it shows up other places in the Bible. One of them is in 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 14. It says, "The weight of gold that came to Solomon, yearly was 666 talents of gold." Okay, well here it is in the Hebrew. 6 is shesh, miot, shishim, vashesh, kikar. Okay, so what do we do with that? Look at the first letter of each of those. You have a shin, mem, a shin, a vav, and a kaf. And if I put in the gematria values for those, the first letter of each word adds up to 666. Incredible! All right. There's another verse, it's in Chronicles. It's the same verse. It's just retelling the story of the weight of gold that comes to Solomon each year. There's a third place also in the Old Testament where 666 is mentioned. But we'll get to that when we do the Antichrist talk. Okay, a new topic. And to show you this one, I first have to explain to you what is Atbash. Okay? This is it not? I don't know. It seems to work. And I'm going to give you a couple examples, more than a couple examples, because I think it's very cool. Look at Jeremiah 25, verse 26. It says, "All the kings of the north, both near and far, one after another, all the kingdoms on the face of the earth, and after all of them, the king of Shishak will drink it too. Okay, the king of Shishak. You know, I have a map behind me, and you can scour this with a magnifying glass, and you will not find Shishak. There is no such place. Even historically, go through the records, there's no place called Shishak. So why is he saying here, the king of Shishak will drink too? And in Jeremiah 51:41, it says it again. Oh, how Shishak is taken. Oh, how the praise of the whole earth is seized. How Babylon has become desolate among the nations. All right. Well, this might be a hint. You know, how Babylon has become a desolate among the nations. That might be some kind of a hint or tie-in, because it's in the same verse as Shishak. And it's talking about Shishak was taken, and the praise of the earth is seized, and how Babylon, maybe there's a connection. I don't know. But it's definitely not a place that we've ever learned about. So what is Shishak? Okay, well, let's look at this thing called Atbash, and this might help us. Here is the Hebrew alphabet, 22 letters. And I'm going to take the second half of the alphabet and fold it back under the first half. You see what I've done there? Nice. Isn't that clever? That took me all day to do that. Okay, I'm going to take the first letter, which is an aleph, and the last letter, the one below it, which is a tav, and then the second letter is a bet, and the one below it is a shin, and those four letters spell Atbash. And what this actually is just a substitution. Just substituting one letter for another. So take a word, and we had the word Shishak, correct? So shin, what letter would you substitute for shin? Well, the one that's either above it or below it. Shin is on the bottom row, so we substitute it with a bet. And there's another shin, so we get another bet. And then there's a kaf, and that is the final kaf. So below the kaf is the lamed. So you end up with bet, bet, lamed. And what is that? That is Babel, which is the Hebrew word for Babylon. Which now, it kind of makes sense. It is talking about Babylon. Shishak is some kind of a code name or code word, or it's a mighty big coincidence that this Atbash thing worked on that word to produce Babel. Okay? Well, that's pretty clever. Let's see, here's another example. Here's Jeremiah 51:1. It says, Thus says Yahweh, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon, against those who dwell in Lev Kamai, a destroying wind. Okay? Those who dwell in Lev Kamai, well, who are they? Again, there is no Lev Kamai on the map or any map. So let's put in our Atbash and put in Lev Kamai. And here's how you spell it, the Lamed, Bet, and then Kuf, Mem, Yod, and we will substitute everyone either above or below it. Now we have these 5 new letters, which is a word. It's the word Kasdim. And what is Kasdim? That's the Hebrew word for the Chaldeans. Who were the Chaldeans? They were the people who lived around Babylon. So that's what it says, against those who dwell in Lev Kamai. Where's Lev Kamai? That's the Chaldeans, which he's going to raise up against Babylon and the people who dwell in Lev Kamai, the Chaldeans, the people of Babylon. Okay, so now let's tie this in mathematically. Now that you've seen 2 examples of Atbash, let's see how it works with some numbers involved. Look at Psalm 90, verse 4. This is familiar. I'm sure you've heard this. It says, For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, or like a watch in the night. Okay, this is what this is saying. The New Testament confirms it. It says, to God, a day is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years is like a day. And you know, it kind of makes sense. If you go from Adam to Jesus, you can add up all the ages and times, and it adds up to about 4,000 years. And from Jesus, Yeshua, until today is 2,000 years. That's a total of 6,000 years. And Yeshua is coming back, and he's going to set up his 1,000-year reign of Christ. That will be the 7th 1,000 years, and then eternity begins. So, to God, that's a week. 7 days is 7,000 years. Okay? So, let's take yesterday, and let's take 1,000 years. 1,000 years is, 1,000 is Aleph. Remember, Aleph is 1, but you can also pronounce it Aleph, and it becomes 1,000. But it's spelled the same as Aleph, okay? And a year is Shana, and plural is Shanim, so Aleph Shanim is 1,000 years. And I put in the gematria values, and it adds up to, Aleph is 111, Shanim is 400, and adds up to 511. Now, wouldn't that be clever? Because it says, in God's sight, 1,000 years is like yesterday. Wouldn't it be fun to see what yesterday adds up to? I can't wait. Okay, what is yesterday? Before I tell you that, I do want to point out something very clever about God and his yesterdays, and that is, look in Exodus 33, starting in verse 20. This is Moses up on the mountain, and he requests to see God. But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live." Then Yahweh said, "Behold, there is a place by me, and you shall stand there on the rock. And it will come about, while my glory is passing by, that I will put you in the cleft of the rock, and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." That word there for back, you shall see my back. Back in Hebrew is achar. Okay, it means behind or after. Okay, you can see my behind. Hear God saying that, but that's behind me. Okay? So, what's clever about that is the word for tomorrow is machar. Notice it's very similar. Achar is behind, machar is tomorrow. Isn't it odd that the root word for tomorrow is behind? That's a head scratcher. And if we look, since akar is behind, look in front of is the Hebrew word mul. And the word for yesterday is ekmul, which again seems odd. Yesterday comes from the root word in front of. Does that seem backwards to you? You know, it does say in Isaiah 55:9, "For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." So God, his thinking is higher than ours, okay? So why is yesterday in front of me and tomorrow is behind me? Well, this is God's thinking, and this is how the Jews think, okay? And they seem to be quite successful, so maybe we should think of it like this, think their way, okay? God's way. And that is, yesterday is in front of me. I lived yesterday. I can see it all. It's right there. Yeah, I went fishing yesterday for trout. We caught 2 and we cooked it up and we ate it. That was yesterday. It's in front of me. Okay? Tomorrow, I have no idea what is tomorrow. I can't see tomorrow. It's behind me. Interesting. You know, it's even logical on some level. Okay? So, now that we know what yesterday is, it's at etmul, and we can put in the values. Aleph is 1, Tav is 400, Mem is 40, Vav is 6, and Lamed 30, and adds up to 477, which does not equal 511. Oh man, that's just a wasted 4 minutes. No, hold on, Because we can take that word yesterday, et mule, and let's make an Atbash. And we'll stick it in here. We know it did add up to 477, but let's transfer. The Aleph becomes a Tav. The Tav becomes an Aleph. The Mem becomes Yod. The Vav is a Pei, and the Lamed is a Kaf. And those 5 letters we put in, 400, 1, 10, 80, and 20. And we get 511, which equals 1,000 years. So, if you use Atbash, yes, yesterday equals 1,000 years in God's sight. So I think God uses Atbash. He put this in here, okay? Remember, he says, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it's the honor of kings to seek them out. So he hides these little things in here, and they're very, very cool. And God did it. God did this. Man did not hide this stuff in here. Okay? Only God wrote this book. Here's another example of Atbash that has some number involved. Look in Genesis 19:24. It says, "Then the Lord, Yahweh, rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from Yahweh out of heaven." Now, this is a good verse here because it talks about Yahweh. He's down on earth. He just was visiting Abraham, and Abraham made food for him. Remember, Abraham or God and 2 others visited him, and then he sent the 2 down to Sodom. But so God, Yahweh, when it's Yahweh, he's on the earth. And it says, Yahweh rained brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of heaven. It's kind of pointing to the fact that there's a Yahweh on earth who's calling down fire from Yahweh in heaven. Again, it's that complex unity, right? There's a Father who's in heaven, and there's a Son who is on the earth. And then there's a Spirit who's everywhere. Okay? But let's take a look at that verse. And it says we have Yahweh, he's down on earth, Aretz. And we have Yahweh up in Hashemayim, up in the heavens. Right? Okay? So there's Yahweh on earth. And it says he rained fire from the Yahweh in heaven. So there is fire that's going to be up in heaven that's going to come down. Fire, by the way, is represented by the letter Shin, right? Shin, destruction, teeth. Aish is fire. It's the SH sound, and its value is 300, the gematria value. So we also have Yahweh who's up in heaven, and we have Sodom and Gomorrah down on earth. So these are the 4 things we got to deal with. Yahweh in heaven, Yahweh on earth, fire in heaven, and Sodom and Gomorrah on earth. Okay? Well, Yahweh adds up to 26. Yud 10, Hey 5, Vav 6, Hey 5. And so it's 26 either side, heaven or on earth. Let's put an Atbash in here. And let's take Yahweh's name, Yud Hey, Vav Hey, and apply an Atbash. Well, the Yud becomes a Mem, the Hey becomes a Tzadi, and the Vav becomes a Pei, and there's another Tzadi, the other Hey. And put in the Gematrias, 90, 80, 90, and 40, and that adds up to 300. And what is 300? 300 represents Shin. Shin is fire. And so here we have Yahweh 26 raining down 300 on Sodom and Gomorrah. How cool is that? It's showing that there is fire and Yahweh. We're both up in heaven. Very nice. Okay, now you know that the Hebrew letters, they each have a value, but then there's 5 of those Hebrew letters that are called the Sophit letters. These are the letters, the last letter of a word. Okay, the Kaf has a final form, and its value is 500. Remember, in the normal alphabet, Tav is the last letter, it's 400. Then final Kaf is 500, final Mem is 600, Nun Sophit is 700, Pe Sophit is 800, and Sadi Sophit is 900. Let's put some of those in and see what kind of things happen, okay? Just keep that in mind. Let's start with Elohim. First of all, just basic Elohim adds up to 86, right? It's Aleph 1, Lamed 30, Hey 5, Yod 10, Mem 40. And that can be broken down. If you take the first three, it adds up to 36. 36 is a perfect triangle number. Very clever, because God is this perfect triangle, this complex unity, Father, Son, Spirit, threeness involved in him. If you take the middle three letters, the Lamed, the Hey, and the Yod, that's 35 and 10, that adds up to 45. 45 is a perfect triangle number, again stressing his complex unity. If you take the last three letters, the Hey, Yod, Mem, 5, 10, and 40 adds up to 55. That's a perfect triangle number. Again, complex unity. God adds up to 86, Elohim. Okay. In the New Testament, they use Greek alphabet, and the word for God in Greek is theos. All right. And theos, here's the isosophy values. Theos adds up to 284. But it's the same word, God, okay? It's his title, not his name. And if I add those two together, the 86 and 84, it comes up to 370. What's so special about 370? Well, you know, it's a 37. How many videos have you watched the other two math videos? 37 is everywhere in the Bible. This truly is God's number. It's 3, his complex unity, and his 7, his completeness, his perfection. Okay? So here you have 37 times 10 is the two values added together. Very clever. Here's Genesis 1:1. The Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz. If I go through and look for the letter Aleph, well, the third letter there is an Aleph. And I continue on, and the 9th letter of the verse is an Aleph. The 10th letter is an Aleph. The 15th letter, the 23rd letter, and the 26th letter all are Alephs. And if I take those place numbers, 3, 9, 10, 15, 23, and 26, add them together, I get 86. Aleph, you know, is God's letter, right? And he's left that fingerprint. I was here, 86. Now I'm going to take that same verse, but I'm going to plug in the gematria values, including the Sophit values. So there are 2 Mem Sophits at the end of the third word, Elohim, and the 5th word, Hashemayim. I'm going to put those values in as 600. And the final letter of the verse is a final Tzadi, which is 900. Okay? So we take all those values, then I'm going to drop all the zeros and just take the digits, and if you add up all the digits, you get 86. Again, God's fingerprint, he was there. Elohim, we say, is 86. Remember, we're talking about this complex unity. There is not just the Father, Elohim, and there's the Son, and there's the Ruach Elohim. That's the third person of this complex unity. The Ruach, the Spirit. Okay? Spirit, by the way, Ruach, is a Resh 200, Vav 6, Chet 8. The word Spirit adds up to 214. And if I add the two together, the Ruach Elohim, Spirit of God, notice it adds up to 214 plus 86 is 300. And what do we know about 300? 300 is Shin, fire. The Holy Spirit, it screams fire. Look at Acts chapter 2 when the Holy Spirit was sent on the day of Pentecost. Verse 3 and 4 says, they saw tongues like flames of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. And verse 4, and they were all filled with the Holy Spirit, with the Ruach HaKodesh, and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. Very clever. that the Spirit of God adds up to 300. Fire, which the Spirit of God shows up as a fire. I love it. Okay, by the way, if we take those final forms and let's put it in here for Elohim, because right now Elohim adds up, it's a 40, right? That's the gematria value of the mem, the final mem. But let's put in the 600 value for it, okay, the Sophite value. When I do that, now Ruach still is 214, and Elohim is now 646. And if I add those two together, I get 860, which is 86 times 10. It's like God on steroids. Okay. By the way, if you take Elohim, which is 86, and by the way, God, remember, God is Aleph, and Aleph can represent 1, and Aleph can represent 1,000, right? So Elohim is 86, Yahweh is 26, Yahweh Elohim, that's his name and his title. And who is Yahweh Elohim? It's Yeshua, Eusus in the Greek, and Eusus adds up to 888. And if I add these three together, Yahweh Elohim, Yeshua, Eusus, it adds up to 1,000. It's pointing that Jesus is God, is Yahweh, is Aleph, is Eleph. Yes! Love it. Okay. We know his name is Yahweh, Yud-He Vav-He, which we said adds up to 26. Sometimes he goes by the shortened version, Yah, Yud-He, which is 15. His title, different than his name, is Elohim, which we said is 86. And he has a shortened version of his title also. It's El, which is just Aleph Lamed, 31. Okay, so look at these four words and these four numbers. We have 15, 26, 31, and 86. And what is so clever about that? They all point to Aleph. And why do they all point to Aleph? They're all pointing to God, because that's his name and his titles, right? But if you go to Genesis and start reading through, the 15th letter, 15, oh, that's Yah, adds up to 15. The 15th letter of the Bible is an Aleph. And keep going till you get to the 26th letter. The 26th letter, 26, that's Yahweh's value, is an Aleph. And then you go to the verse 2, and it's the 31st letter of the Bible is an Aleph. And 31st, 31, that's the gematria of El, his title, the shortened version. And continue reading, the 86th letter of the Bible is also an Aleph. And 86 we know is Elohim. So he's incorporated that Aleph in these special places to point out that he is. Very nice. Let's have a drink on that one. Today we have Lubimi mixed fruit. And, as you know, we're back in Kyrgyzstan. God bless Kyrgyzstan. Okay, look at Genesis 11:4. This is Tower of Babel talk. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." These people wanted to make a name for themselves. They wanted to be their own God, right? And look what it says, let us build ourselves a city. Let us make a name for ourselves. That word us is lanu, lamed, nun, vav. Put in the gematria, 30, 50, and 6 adds up to 86. You see, they're trying to be their own Elohim, their own 86. But God, he puts a stop to it by confusing their languages. Very clever. That they didn't say, come, let God build us a city, let God make a name. No, they're not looking to praise or worship or anything to do with God. They want to be their own God. Very interesting. Okay. let's look at Psalm 86. You know, we're looking at all these 86s, which is God. So let's look at the 86th Psalm. And by the way, you know, most the verses in the books and the chapters and all the chapters anyway, the chapters in the Bible were all kind of man-made. They decided where to number the verses. Man did. Man decided which is verse 1 and verse 2 and verse 3 and where the chapters break. All of that, those numbers that are in there are all man-made. The Psalms, on the other hand, there are actually 150 Psalms, and they are numbered. David numbered them. Okay, here's the first Psalm, here's the second Psalm, 150th Psalm. Okay, so these are not arbitrary, these are actually, this is the 86th Psalm. It's not some man's, this is the 86th Psalm that David wrote. Got it? It's not just some arbitrary number that a man put on there and said this will be Psalm 86. And I'm not going to read it all, but I'll put it up on the screen here. I think it's 17 verses maybe. Incline your ear, Yahweh, and answer me, for I am afflicted and needy. Protect my soul, for I am godly. You, my God, save your servant who trusts in you. Be gracious to me, Lord, for I call upon you all day long. You can read the rest there. Here's verse 8 onward. There is no one like you among the gods, Lord, nor are there any works like yours. Down to 13, for your graciousness toward me is great, and you have saved my soul from the depths of Sheol. Now we're going to verse 14. God, arrogant men have risen up against me, and a gang of violent men have sought my life, and they have not set you before them. But you, Lord, are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abundant in mercy and truth. Turn to me, be gracious to me, grant your strength to your servant, and save the son of your maidservant. Verse 17, show me a sign for good, that those who hate me may see it and be ashamed, because you, Yahweh, have helped me and comforted me. All right, so David here is asking for a sign. Here it is in the Hebrew, that last verse 17, the first line. Show me a sign for good. You can see the word tov is the tet, vav, bet, the three blue letters there. You should know that on Creator Week, he seven times saw things were good. And there's the word for sign. It's ot. And we'll talk about it in a second. Here is Psalm 86. I put it all on one page in the English. And let's turn it to Hebrew. And if you add them up, there's 576 Hebrew letters in this psalm. All right, so what do we do with that? 576, just off the top of my head, I do know is a perfect square. It's 24 times 24. Okay, I was a math teacher, so that's the one that just sticks out easy. Okay, and we do know that the Greek alphabet was used to write the New Testament. Okay, so let's take Psalm 86 and we're going to put it in a grid 24 by 24. Right, there's 576 letters. So here they are, and I've color-coded every other word, black or gray, so you can see the words. And you can look this up yourself and see this is it. Okay? In Greek, it's interesting, the word for spirit, as in Holy Spirit, is pneuma. And pneuma in Greek adds up to 576. Remember, he's asking for a sign, and so we get a 24 by 24, 576 grid, and pneuma is 576. All right? Yeshua, his name we said adds up to 888. Well, you know what? We could take this grid and we could break it into squares of 888 and 888, because 24 is 3 times 8. I see that. I like that. And we're in the 86th Psalm. So these are all numbers that were we're playing with here, right? It's 86. He's asking for a sign. We got 576 tied in for Pneuma, and we got Yeshua tied in with the 888. The word Adonai is kurios in Greek, and it adds up to 800. Iusus, we say, is 888. And Christos, Messiah, adds up to 1480. Now these three words go together nicely. It's the Lord Jesus Christ, right? Kurios, Iusus, Christos. By the way, any Jewish friends who happen to be watching, Christos, Christ. What does Christ mean? Jesus Christ, Christ was not his last name. He's not the son of Mary and Joseph Christ. Christ is a Greek word that means anointed one, Mashiach, Messiah in English. Okay? So whenever you say Jesus Christ, you're saying Iusus Christos, Jesus the Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. And those three, Lord Jesus Christ, if you add them together, they add up to 3,168. All right, what do I do with that number? What's so special? Watch this. The cross, the center cross, the 8 by 8, right? If you add up the ordinate value of those letters, it adds up to 3,168. Very clever. Remember, he's asking for a sign. And what is a sign in Hebrew? It says, show me a sign for good. That word sign is ot, aleph, vav, tav. We've talked about this before. If you want a sign, aleph is God's letter, vav is a nail, tav is two crossed sticks. Tav, two crossed sticks. It looks like a cross. And you have God nailed to a cross. That's a sign. Okay? And that tav is put your mark, put your tav, put your sign. Okay? And here we have, he asks for a sign, and what did God give him? In Psalm 86, he gave him a perfect square that has a cross right in the center that adds up to Lord Jesus Christ. Very nice. And if you take the value, the ordinate value of the center box, just to show that he knows what he's doing and it's all kind of symmetrical, the center box adds up to 666, which is Antichrist's number, as we said earlier. There's symmetry involved here. There's beauty, numbers, math. How nice is that? I mean, that looks like, to me, an answer to David's prayer. He gave him a sign. Very nice. Okay, another cool math thing that's throughout the Bible is called ELS, Equidistant Letter Sequencing. I'm going to give you a couple examples. Here's one of the very early ones in Genesis chapter 2, the first 3 verses. This is day 7 of Creator Week. It says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their hosts. And by the 7th day God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the Sabbath from all the work which he had done. And God blessed the Shabbat and sanctified it," made it holy, "because in it he rested from all his work which God had created to do." Here's those 3 verses in Hebrew, and you'll notice that the word Israel is spelled out every 7 letters, starting here with the Yod at the end of verse 31. Well, that's kind of clever. Count 7 and there's a Shin. Count 7 is a Resh. Count 7 Aleph. Count 7 Lamed. That's nice. And you know what? If I take this same passage and just start 2 verses earlier, in this same passage, Israel is also spelled out every 50 letters. Well, that's interesting that he chose those. Every 7 letters, well, 7's God's number, and 50 is another number that he uses, right? That's the Jubilee year. It's 50, it's just everywhere. And he's put Israel every 50 letters. Very nice. Okay? Look at Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, by the way, it's 12 verses. And is it 12? I think it's 12 verses. I mean, it describes the crucifixion of Yeshua Jesus, that when Jews, I've shown this verse to somebody, I've put it out on paper, and as they're reading it, they're saying, this is New Testament, get out of it, we don't want to, I said, that's not New Testament, it's Ishayahu, it's Isaiah, chapter 53. And most synagogues don't read. You know, they go reading through the Bible every year, and then they have the Torah portion that they read, and then they have the half Torah, which is an extra from the Tanakh. They don't read Isaiah 53 because they don't know how to explain it. And I've heard some rabbis try to explain it as saying, well, this persecuted person is Israel. It's not Jesus. No, if you read it, it's Jesus. It's Yeshua. Okay? He's the Messiah. But here is Isaiah 53. I have the whole, I'm going to show you the whole thing, but just in sections, because I can't squeeze it all onto one screen with letters big enough for you to see. Okay? But here's a grid from Isaiah 53:9 to 54:1. I put 20 letters across. Okay? So it's a 20 by 20 square. Maybe 20 by 20. 20 by 18, I think, is this one. Anyway, notice, if I start here in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line, there's a yod, and then I'm going to skip negative 20 letters. If I'm skipping negative 20, I'm going to go backwards. Remember, Hebrew reads right to left. And it will circle around, and I get a shin. And if I go back 20 more letters, it circles around and I get a vav. And another 20, you get an ayin. And another 20, you get a... Oh, by the way, those first 4 letters, yud, shin, vav, ayin, spell Yeshua. And then another 20 gets you a shin, then a mem, then a yod. Shin, mem is name, and you put a yod on the end, it's my name. So every 20 letters in this passage spells out Yeshua is my name. Who is Isaiah 53 about? He put it in clear, or it is, boom, Yeshua is my name. Okay, was that a big deal? I think it's a big deal. And to further, because remember, this Isaiah 53, it's talking about a crucifixion, okay? And just, this is very cool here, the word Mashiach is Messiah. It's a mem, shin, yod, chet. And Mashiach, if you start down here at this yellow mem, I have it colored in yellow, and I'm gonna skip negative 42 letters. So I'm gonna go backwards 42, which, remember, there's 20 in a line, so if you go back 20, you're right above it. You go back 20 more, you're right above that, and then I got to go 2 more, and you get a shin. And then you go back 42 more, you get a yod. 42 more, you get a chet. It spells Mashiach every 42 letters. And the word Mashiach intersects the word Yeshua is my name. So it's letting you know it is Yeshua HaMashiach. Very clever. And by the way, Messiah's number is 42, right? Because Messiah is man, 6, and he's God, 7. 6 times 7, 42. And every 42 letters apart, it spells Messiah. Very nice. In that same passage, with a skip of positive 52, you start up here at the top. I have a green vav on line 3, and skip 52 letters, and you get a tzadi, and 52, you get a lamed, then a bet, then a tav, then a yod, and that spells I was crucified. if you start on the purple, and it's the purple resh on line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, and then go back 7, and you get an ayin, and go back 7 again, you get another ayin, and then a yod, then a resh, then another resh, vav, mem, yod. That spells evil Roman city. Romi or Ra. And they had a very significant part in the crucifixion from Isaiah 53. This is the same grid. We're just going to try to clean it up because it starts getting very busy with all these letters in here. You know what else was happening at the crucifixion? Mary was there. Mary, his mother, right? And because he tells John to take care of his mother. And Mary's name is in this passage with a skip of -23. By the way, Mary Magdalene was there also at the cross. Well, that's okay, because you got another Mary in this in Isaiah 53 with a skip of 6. You know what? There was a third Mary there. The wife of Clopas was at the cross. Well, that's okay. He's got a third Mary woven in with a skip of 44. Very nice. And we told you, he told John to take care of his mother. John is Yochanan in Hebrew, right? That's okay. Yochanan is also in this same grid with a skip of -28. It's the dark, is that a purpley color there? Okay. Peter he's in here with a skip of -14. You know, to weave all these names through legible text, because if you read Isaiah 53, it's a story. You can read it and understand it, but he's got these other things woven in every so many letters. Man could not do this. And I didn't put them in a grid, but this is just other parts from Isaiah 53. If you start back in Isaiah 52, you have James, Yaakov, has a skip of -20, and there's another James in the Bible there. He's got a skip of -34. Isaiah 52:12 through 53:5. Philip is in there with a skip of 133, negative. Simeon, another apostle, here has a skip of 47. Thomas has a skip of 35, showing up. Andrew has a skip of -48, showing up. All the apostles are going to be in here. The word Galilee is in with a -32 skip in Isaiah 53, 5 through 7. His cross is a skip of -8. The phrase, "let him be crucified," is in here with a skip of +15 in verses 8 and 9. Thaddeus is in with a skip of -50. The word bread, lechem, is in with a skip of 26. Wine, yayin, is a skip of 210. Shiloh has a skip of 19. That's a name for the Messiah. So he's got that all woven into Isaiah 53, all the important players. And some of the other important players, Pontius Pilate and things like that. So much is hidden inside Isaiah 53. It has to be Yeshua it's talking about, not Israel. Okay, maybe the most famous, or famous, how about the first equidistant letter sequencing in the Bible goes back in Genesis chapter 1, in the first 5 verses. Here is Genesis, the first 5 verses put into a grid. And notice in the first line, it's at Bereshit bara Elohim. That's the first sentence of the Bible. You see it there on the top. Start at the first tav. It's the sixth letter of the Bible. It's the last letter of the word Bereshit. And I'm going to skip 50 letters. In my grid here, I put 25 letters across. So if you're going to skip 50, when you get to 25 letters, you're underneath the tav, and then go another 25 underneath, you're at a vav. And you've skipped 50. And then skip 50 more, you get a resh. Skip 50 more, you get a hey. It spells Torah every 50 letters. That's kind of clever. No, that's very clever. Okay? And let's just park that up here. And let's look at Exodus, or Shemot in Hebrew. It does the same thing. Start at the first tav, count 50, you get a vav. 50 is a resh, 50 is a hey. It spells Torah every 50 letters in Exodus, or in Shemot is the Hebrew word. Very nice, spelling Torah. In the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, here it does a skip of negative 50, and it does it backwards. You start with a tav down below, or maybe that's better to explain it. Look at the hey on the first row and jump ahead 50. You get a resh, then a vav, then a tav. Or if you start at the tav and work backwards, it's a skip of negative 50. Nevertheless, it spells Torah backwards every 50 letters. You know, something's up. That just doesn't happen accidentally. You understand? It makes you wonder what's happening in Deuteronomy, and here is Deuteronomy. The thing is, Deuteronomy, it doesn't do a skip of 50. It does a skip of 49. Negative 4. It's written backwards, but a skip of 49. Negative 49. Why is that? I don't know. But it makes me think that it was intentional, right? Because the skip is there, and he just made it one less. But on the Numbers and Deuteronomy, it's Torah backwards. Now, this begs the question, what about Leviticus? You know, that's the one that's in the middle. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Well, let's look at Leviticus. I'm going to do a grid of 8. 8 across. That's a very small, a very tight grid. What in the world could he be hiding in there? If I start with the second letter, which is a yod, and I'm going to skip 8 letters. So you go ahead 8, I'm directly below it with a hey, and another 8, I'm a vav, and another 8, I'm a hey. I get yud, hey, vav, hey, Yahweh. Leviticus spells Yahweh every 8 letters apart. Very, very clever. And it's showing that all the Genesis, Exodus, pointing into Yahweh. Numbers and Deuteronomy are pointing into Yahweh backwards. It's all focuses on Yahweh. Very, very nice. Okay, now, that was a very tight grid, especially that one in Leviticus. He does it on a big scale as well. I'm going to show you an example, and it's an amazing example, that has a skip of 3,805 across. Actually, I'm going to put 3,806 letters across. And then the next row and the next row. That's the goal here. So, here's the part we're going to look at. We're going to start in Genesis chapter 41, and we're going to go all the way through Exodus 23. Well, that's many chapters, right? It's 9, 20, that's 31 chapters, 32 chapters of the Bible. I can't fit it all on the screen, so I'm going to just put the beginning of each one, okay? If I put, here is that passage, you understand what this is the best here. The first line is Genesis 41:51. And it continues on, and it continues on, and continues on. 3,806 letters later, we're back to the second line, Genesis 43:18. and I'm going to go 3,806 letters, and I'm going to go to the third line, which is Genesis 45:21. You understand what we're doing here? That is the grid. Granted, you're only seeing a portion of it because I can't fit it all on the screen. Okay? But just in this little portion that you can see, look what we do. We start here with this blue hay. And I'm going to jump back 3,801 letters. And I'm going to keep skipping 3,801 letters. And it's actually a negative 3,801 letters. When I do that, I get a tav. And if I go back another 3,801 letters, I get an aleph. Then I get a vav. Then I get a mem. Then I get a yod. Then I get another mem. That's a lot of letters. And it happened to spell the twins. Okay, that's kind of interesting. What else do you have in this same grid? Look here. Oh, right here in the orange letters. Those orange letters, they don't skip at all. That's just an actual word. Okay, it's migdalim. Migdalim, migdal is a tower. Migdalim, plural, towers. So I have the twins, towers. Nice. Same grid. Ah, look at these green letters. These green letters, they actually have a skip of 3,806. Okay, because they're right stacked on top of each other. And those letters in the green, what do we got here? Start at the top. It's a bet, then a yod, then a noon, then a lamed, then an aleph, then a dalet, then a final noon. That spells bin Laden. Wow. You know, this was written, what, 3,000, 4,000 years ago? Okay. In the red, I have these four letters with a skip of 1. And those four letters spell the Hebrew word for terror attack. Here I have in the yellow or gold, I have a skip of 3,806 because they're right on top of each other. And, oh, well, this you can figure out. Look at the top reading down. It's an aleph, lamed, pei. Aleph, lamed, pei. That's aleph. That's 1. Or it also can be elef. It could be 1,000, right? Aleph, lamed, pei is elef, 1,000. And if you put a yod on the end of it, it's thousands. Then you have the next word. It's an aleph, yod, shin. That's ish, man or men. So you have thousands of men, thousands of people. Has a skip of 3,806. Oh, here's these 4 purple letters. These 4 purple ones, they also have a skip of 3,806. And those 4 letters spell the word murder. So we've got the Twin Towers, bin Laden, terror attack, thousands of people murdered. And even though this grid goes on for 3,800 letters, all the pertinent information is very tight in this one short little section of that huge grid. This is God's way of saying, hey, 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 I'm God and I know the future. And I can prove that I know the future. He has it woven inside here. Very nice. To God be the glory. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Whew, I love it. Okay, let's go somewhere else. Hebrews 9. This is New Testament, the Brit Hadashah, in verse 3. It talks about, it's describing things in a tabernacle. Behind the second veil, there was a tabernacle, which is called the Holy of Holies, having a golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden jar holding the manna, and Aaron's rod which budded, and the tables of the covenant. So, in the Ark of the Covenant, you had three things. You had the manna, Haman. Okay. You had the rod of Aaron. It's Hamatah Aaron. And you had the tablets that Moses came down with the Ten Commandments on it, right? Those three things, let's put in the gematria values for the three things inside the ark. Manna is 5, 40, and 50. There's the rod, and it adds up to 95. The rod of Aaron adds up to 315, and the tablets add up to 443. So the contents of the ark add up to 853. Moshiach, Mem, Shin, Yud, Chet, Messiah adds up to 358, which is a reflection. Notice the contents of the ark are a reflection of Messiah. Jesus is our daily bread, the manna, right? The rod of Aaron, this was that a dead stick that sprouted life, okay? Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And the tablets represent the Word of God. And Jesus, in the beginning, was the Word was with God, the Word was God. The contents of the ark reflect Messiah, and their values add up to 853, which is kind of a palindrome or a reverse of Messiah, 358. Very, very clever. Okay, Psalm 119, 160. It says, the entirety of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous judgments endures forever. The word truth we've covered. We have a whole video on truth. Is emet, adds up to 441. Aleph, Mem, Tav, which is 21 times 21. And God said to Moses, remember when he goes up and says, they're going to ask, what is your name? And God answered, Ehyah, Asher Ehyah, I am who I am, or I am that I am. That Ehyah, I am, is Aleph 1, Hey 5, Yod 10, Hey 5 is 21 times 21, Ehyah, Ehyah, which is truth. And 21 is 3 times 7, times 21 is 3 times 7. 3, 7, 3, 7. You got those 3s and 7s just everywhere, don't you? Isn't that cool? Oh, you want to see 3s and 7s? Watch this. Okay. I think we'll end up on this one. This is a long one, but it's good. Okay. Let's look at the first words and the first letter of each book in the Torah. Genesis is Bereshit, bara Elohim. The first word is Bereshit. That also is the name of the book, right? Bereshit in Hebrew. It means in beginning. The first letter is a bet. Its value is 2. The second book of the Bible is Exodus, or Shemot. It means these are the names. Shem is name. Pluralized it, it's feminine. Shemot. These are the names. The first letter of Exodus is a Vav. Its value is 6. Third book of the Torah is Leviticus. The first word, it's called Vayikra in Hebrew. Vayikra. Va is and. E is Lord. Kara is to call out. And the Lord called out is what Vayikra means. The first letter of Leviticus is a Vav. The book of Numbers, Bamidbar. Bamidbar means, ba is in, the prefix. Midbar is wilderness, in the wilderness. The first letter is a vav, value 6. And Debarim, Deuteronomy. Debar means word. If you pluralize it, Debarim, words. And Debarim means, Deuteronomy, these are his words. The first letter of Deuteronomy is an aleph. Okay? And what do we do with this? Well, that's the first letters of each of the 5 books of the Torah. And I've shown you this before, but if you read them in English, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, it just sounds like the 5 books of the Bible. But in Hebrew, Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devarim is actually a sentence which says, in beginning, these are the names the Lord called out in the wilderness, and these are his words. Very nice how that is there. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the last words and the last letters of each book of the Torah. In Genesis, Bereshit, the last word is Bamitzrayim. The ba is in, Mitzrayim is Egypt. Genesis ends, and Joseph died at 110 years old, and he was buried in a coffin in Egypt. I mean, what a... if you look at Genesis, it starts out with a bang, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Wow! And then all of a sudden it ends with, and Joseph died at 110, and he was buried in a coffin in Egypt. The man spiraled down from the beginning. Nevertheless, the last word of Genesis is Mitzrayim, and the last letter is a mem, which is 40. Shemot, Exodus, the last word is Masachem, which is journeys. Okay? And the last letter is also a mem, the value is 40. In Leviticus, the last word is Sinai, and the last letter is a yod, 10. In the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, the last word is Jericho, and the last letter is a vav. And in Deuteronomy, Devarim, the last word is Israel, and the last letter is a lamed, value 30. And just remember, when we looked at the first words of the Torah, they had a little message, right? In beginning, these are the names the Lord called out in the wilderness, and these are his words. If you look at the last words of each book in the Torah, we have Egypt, journeys, Sinai, Jericho, Israel. This is the Jews' history. They were in Egypt, and then they left on Passover, and they journeyed, and then they ended up in Sinai, where they got the law. Then they wandered in the wilderness till they got to crossing the Jordan into Jericho, and then finally they had Israel. So it's a nice history lesson in the last words. Very, very clever. Okay, let's look at the total of the first letters. The bet 2, vav 6, vav 6, vav 6, aleph 1 adds up to 21. 21, you know, is 3 times 7. No surprise he wove 3 and 7 in there. If we add up the last letters of each book of the Torah, we have mem 40, yod 10, vav 6, lamed 30, adds up to 126. You know, I got that number and I thought, well, 126, what is that? That's nothing screaming out at me. And then I realized 126 is 6 times 3 times 7. And if you add the two together, all the firsts and all the lasts, you get 147, which is 7 times 3 times 7. Just amazing. Amazing. Man did not write this book Only God could have written and woven everything you've seen in my videos, plus who knows how much more. Only God could have written it. All right. To God be the honor. To God be the glory. To God be the praise. Thanks so much for watching. Isn't it just so cool? Pass these videos out. Let people know. All right. We'll see you soon. God bless. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus. Okay, this is going to blow you away. Let's look at the first 4 words of the Torah. Bereshit bara Elohim et. In the beginning, God created. Okay, this is going to take a second. You understand what is base 10. That's what we normally deal in, right? When you're looking at a big number, the first column is the ones column, and then you have the tens column, and then you have the hundreds column, right? Thousands, 10,000s. Each column gets bigger by 10. That's called base 10. There is such a thing as base 2, where the only digits you're allowed to use are 0 and 1. We call this binary, all right? This is the computer language, ones and zeros. So if you have the number 7, for example, in base 10, 7, if you convert that to base 2, it equals, now in base 2, your columns are a ones column, and then the next column are the 2 column, and then you have a 4 column, and then you have an 8 column, a 16 column, okay? So to get the number 7, you need a 1, and you need a 2, and you need a 4. So it would be 1, 1, 1. That's 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 1, 1 in base 2 is 7 base 10. That's a quick, maybe not a great lesson on that, but keep that in mind for what you're about to see. Let's look at the first word. Bereshit, we know, adds up to 913. Okay. Bara, the second word, is Bet Resh Aleph, adds up to 203. Then the third word is Elohim, which we've talked, is 86. And then you have the fourth word is Et, Aleph Tav, is 401. So here are the first 4 words of the Bible and their gematria values. All right. Let's just push them over here to the side. If we're talking base 10, for example, Bereshit, 913, you would have 9 hundreds, 1 10, and 3 ones. Bara is 2 hundreds, no tens, and 3 ones. 86 is 8 tens and 6 ones. Et is 4 hundreds, no tens, and 1 1. That's how base 10 works. Let's now look at it in base 2. When we do, here are again the columns. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. It goes on and on, okay? Each one gets twice as big. To write 913 in binary, base 2, you would need, well, 913. I'm going to need a 512. I'm going to need a 256. I need 128. I need a 16 and a 1. And that would add up to 913. And all those spaces, so 913, by the way, in base 2 is 11100100001. And I'm going to color in all the boxes that have a 1 in them. We'll just color them in red. Bara, 203, would be 11001011. And I'm going to color in all the ones orange. Elohim, 86. It's going to be 1010110. Get you 86, and we'll color those in. And Et is 401, which is 111010001. And we'll color those in green. Okay, so now that we've graphed the first 4 words in base 2, you know, I just see a lot of colors and stuff. I'm going to clean it up and just make all the same color. And so we'll make all the first stuff that there's a space between these, looks like. We'll make all the first ones blue and all the second ones brown. And you know what I see here? I see God. I see El. I see Aleph Lamed. In the beginning, God created, and in base 2, he's got Aleph Lamed. You can't make an Aleph with a that's in there. What is it? 5 by 4 squares. There's no way you can make a better Aleph than that. And the Lamed, he's made in a 4 by 4 square. That's the letter Lamed. Is that unbelievably cool? All right, there's your bonus. Thanks for watching. God bless. Bye-bye.